In India and internationally, SpiceJet has already received over 20 planes of Jet Airways on lease and has also taken over some international routes. To throw more light on this entire situation, Ajay Singh, the Chairman and Managing Director of SpiceJet, joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us on CNBC-TV18. Before talking about the larger issue at hand, I just wanted to get some finer details out of the way. At the moment, how many aircrafts of Jet have you taken over? How many pilots, cabin crew, employees on the whole have you taken over?
Well, at this time, we have signed LOIs for about 28 jet aircraft. Okay. And we are starting to induct those aircraft tomorrow. We are in discussions to try and induct another 15 odd jet aircraft. So it should be close to 40 aircraft in all. You also asked me about the people at Jet, and obviously these planes are going to need people to fly them, and who better to fly them than people who are already trained to do it. So we are actually taking a significant number of people from Jet, both pilots and cabin crew. They're excellent professionals, and we are very happy to have them on board. At this time, we've recruited about 1,000 of Jet staff, and as and when we require more people, we will do it.
Okay, so as of this week, is all the capacity that you lost because of Boeing covered up by the number of jet aircraft?
Not as yet. It will be covered up by next week. That's our expectation.
Okay, and what is the update on Boeing itself? When are you likely to be allowed to refly those planes?
Well, what we've been told is that the technical fix is already in place, and that the problem seems to have been resolved by Boeing. The documentation for this will be submitted to the FAA this month, and Boeing expects to get all their clearances by the middle of May. Oh. So our expectation is that we should start to fly these aircraft in early June.
Okay. And they will compensate you for your inability to fly them for so long? Have you come to a figure and understanding?
There's no figure or understanding as yet, but in such circumstances, it's normal for plane makers to compensate their customers, and we fully expect that is what will happen in this case.
Okay. Did you or will you ever consider submitting bids for Jet Airways? And will you look at partnering at any point with any of the bidders? I mean, as a potential investor, what would the biggest deterrents be now?
The deterrents are exactly what they were a few weeks ago when we were first approached to participate in this bidding process. And I think the big deterrents really are firstly, let me say that, of course, Jet Airways is an excellent brand. It's an iconic brand. It's something that we have all as Indians been so very proud of. But the big deterrents right now are the liabilities that Jet has accrued over this time frame. And in our opinion, those liabilities are close to 25,000, perhaps even in excess of 25,000 crores. So it needs very, very deep pockets for somebody to get in there and try and revive that airline. Having said that, our best wishes are with them, and we hope somebody goes and does it. But SpiceJet was too small an airline to actually attempt such a thing.
25,000 crore, how do you get that figure, Mr. Singh? The banks are owed maybe 8,500 crore of straight-on debt, and then maybe there will be guarantees and off-balance sheet commitments. But even that, maybe we were told 11,000 crore. Where is the remaining 14,000 crore? Is this past salaries or something like that? That much, 25,000?
Look, a lot of our calculation was, and perhaps we were wrong, but we did this in some detail, and our estimate was that there were vendor liabilities which were close to 14,000 crores, and of course there are advances from the sale of seats. Which will have to be paid back to customers, and those are probably about 2,500 crores as well.
Oh yes, you're telling me there's family commitments, tickets booked, which have been cancelled now, and where money is awaited. In that context, when are airfares going to come down? I mean, it's becoming impossible to fly. We've cancelled tickets and not rebooked them for family members.
Yeah, I think it's a big problem, and this is precisely the reason that SpiceJet has been aggressive in trying to add capacity. I think the solution to high ticket prices is to get more capacity. There's a simple mismatch of demand and supply at this time, and we need to balance this as soon as we possibly can. So from SpiceJet's perspective, why we were trying to be so aggressive was that because we were the only operator that operated the same aircraft that Jet Airways did, it was relatively easy for us to take some of those planes and fly them. We have the same pilots, the same engineers, and the same crew, so we can do it. So we are trying to get as many planes as possible and fly them, so that the market can be better balanced and the fares can be more reasonable. I think other airlines will also attempt to add some capacity here, but it's simply that SpiceJet was the best place, and so we are trying to be as aggressive as we possibly can.
But aren't you all a bit guilty of fleecing the customer, Mr. Singh? I mean, Bombay-Goa fares went to 15,000 crores, and I heard even a Delhi flight at 25,000 crores. Sorry, not crores, 25,000 rupees. This was really taking advantage of the customer, isn't it?
No, let me tell you that it's very difficult to artificially try and depress fares. It is a supply and demand mismatch, and hopefully in the next 30 days or so, you will see a very different market dynamic.
Okay, since you talked about market balance, Mr. Singh, I just have to ask you about this whole issue with respect to slots. Because, reports indicate that Indigo, the Tata Group, etc. have all objected to the government's decision to give slots only to those players who are inducting new aircrafts. Do you think that objection is valid, considering that it just negates a level playing field?
No, I think that essentially what the government is attempting to do is to get new capacity to take the space of the capacity temporarily, hopefully vacated by Jet. So it makes very little sense for people to start pulling aircraft, let's say, out of the northeast and out of other such areas, and using those aircraft to try and occupy slots in Delhi and Mumbai. So what the government is doing is that please carry on and operate your network as you were operating, and to take the space of Jet Airways network, please get new capacity. So I think that's only fair, because doing anything else would mean that you would deprive somebody else of flights, some other region of flights. In some cases, some airlines could even take flights out of international routes and start to try and occupy slots in Delhi and Mumbai. That probably won't be a happy solution for the aviation space. So I think government is trying to urge every airline to get as much capacity as they possibly can, new capacity as they possibly can. And all these airlines have committed to government that they will, in a short period of time, get new capacity.
So
I think everybody should pitch in and help in a situation where there is a national issue and a real problem in the aviation space.
Okay, the only problem is that aircraft induction cannot be expedited at such a short pace by a lot of players, right? So I guess only maybe you're the only one that could benefit from these slots being given. But be that as it may, what does all of this do to your market share? Because in the month of March...
No, that's not true, because even in
go ahead.
Even in the ordinary course, all the airlines are adding capacity. It's not that only SpiceJet was adding capacity. SpiceJet, in fact, suffered a little bit because of the MAX aircraft being down. But everybody is adding capacity, and some more than others. In this case, of course, SpiceJet, being the only airline which is a Boeing operator, can actually quickly operate jet aircraft, which is the one advantage that SpiceJet has in the short term.
Okay, before I forget, since you say that the hole in Jet Airways is as high as 25,000 crores or more, do you think it will be bid at all? I mean, even a person with deep pockets may not want to put in so much money in disentangling something which is entangled. Do you think it will end up in an asset sale?
Well, that's really not for me to say.
Your best guess, since you are the expert.
Jet Airways is an iconic brand, and it is an iconic brand, and they have the most wonderful people and the most wonderful slots and routes. And somebody with really deep pockets can probably look at it, but it's really not for me to say whether it will be bid or not. I do hope that somebody does make a bid, and I do hope that Jet Airways has a chance to survive.
How does the sector prevent the repeat of a situation like this? Not just with Jet, even with Kingfisher Airlines. Are we looking at the sector seeing a lot more consolidation? Because clearly, as we have discussed in the past, the policies are just not in sync with the growth of this sector. What do you think could be the measures to solve such problems?
Well, as we've said often, aviation is a global business, and increasingly all of us are competing not only with each other but with airlines across the world. So if India is to be an aviation power, I think what has happened that airlines like Kingfisher and Jet should serve as a warning, and it should make us rethink our policies towards aviation. I think we are still living in an era where aviation was supposed to be something for the rich, and so it was taxed at a very high rate. Nowhere in the world today is aviation fuel taxed at 40%. In fact, there are no taxes on aviation fuel in all the leading aviation economies of the world. So that's a huge deterrent to aviation in India. In addition to that, we have various other forms of charges, taxes, dues, and processes which make it exceedingly difficult. I mean, today, if I was to send an engine out for repair, when I get it back, there is an import duty on that repair. When no other country charges import duty. That in itself actually led to problems for airlines last year, including Jet, by the way, which all of us had to fork out large sums of money to government as import duty, which all of us paid under protest. So those issues need to be looked at. I think we also need to look at, as a country, a policy which encourages Indian carriers to fly Indian passengers across the world, long haul across the world, and we need to create global aviation hubs within our own country. No, I think that's absolutely critical, and all the stakeholders need to get together and think of how they can make this happen.
Okay, I was coming to that. Your tie-up with Emirates, what do you see that as the future? Is there a stake buy that you one day contemplate? I mean, that's the best place to make India a hub, isn't it, to get people like these in through a JV?
Well, at this time, this is a collaboration and a partnership which seeks to take Indian passengers throughout the world, SpiceJet passengers throughout the world on Emirates network, and seeks to get Emirates passengers into India and distribute them throughout the country on SpiceJet's network. But increasingly, as in the future, I expect that we will continue to collaborate with the leading airlines of the world, like Emirates. Of course, this arrangement is a huge positive for SpiceJet. We will have arrangements of this sort with other airlines around the world. But at some time in the future, Indian carriers will also compete with these large airlines, because Indian carriers will seek to take passengers to destinations directly, bypassing some of the hubs that have been created around our country. So we need to have policy measures, and we need to have, airlines need to work towards ultimately creating global hubs within our own country.
So a stake buy from Emirates is not thought out, or is that also somewhere there?
It's not been discussed at this time, and SpiceJet is not proposing to sell any stake at this point of time. But we are very pleased that a leading global airline like Emirates should choose first to collaborate with SpiceJet in India. We
understand that tomorrow onwards, the first batch of the Jet 737s will be joining your fleet, and these have business class seats as well. Tell us what the plan is there in terms of, once you start with business class services, how will your cost structure change? Is that a change in strategy altogether?
Well, at this time, we need to put capacity into the system as soon as we possibly can. So there was no time to really try and change the seat configuration in the Jet Airways aircraft. So we are flying them as is, along with the business class. And given that we are flying them along with the business class, we want to experiment with trying to sell a business class product, which we will start to sell from 7th of May. We think that there is potential in doing this, because Jet was the largest largest provider of business class seats in the country, and we will definitely try and experiment. Given the fact that we have the seats and we have these aircraft, we will sell a business class product starting from the 7th of May, and let's see how it goes. We are looking, of course, constantly at what this does to our unit cost and our unit revenue, and we believe that that it will actually be beneficial for us to do this. But it's an experiment, and we'll see how it goes.
You can tie up with one of the bidders for Jet at a later stage, right?
This is completely hypothetical. I think that. I certainly will not want any financial engagement of SpiceJet in this whole process, because we're too small an airline, and the liabilities, to our mind, are exceedingly large.
Okay, but since you went to the data room, what is the sustainable debt for Jet? I mean,
look, I don't want to comment on it because I'm not I'm not there. Bidding, and I'm not involved in the process, so it would be unfair of me to comment on.
You're the only expert we have now on airline whom we have spoken to as an outsider. Just what went wrong with Jet? I mean, if Indigo and SpiceJet could still be fine, what do you think was there? Of course, there are industry problems like fuel taxes and stuff like that, but all of you are operating in the same environment. So what specifically do you think was wrong in the Jet strategy?
Well, I think that Jet was a somewhat higher cost airline. The unit costs were quite high, and unfortunately in the Indian system, it's very difficult to get a commensurate revenue. So essentially, I think what was happening was that full service airlines like Kingfisher and Jet had a higher cost base, but were forced to sell at fares which were comparable to low-cost airlines like Indigo and SpiceJet. And I think in that there is always a problem. And when the external conditions become adverse, when oil prices go up or when the currency depreciates, then the pressures become very intense. If this happens over several years, then of course, at some point of time there is going to be trouble.
So, Mr. Singh, what are you targeting in terms of market share, say over the next 1 year? Currently, it's around 13% or so. In fact, because of Jet's grounding, Indigo has gained more market share than Spice. But what's the plan going ahead? What's your target?
Well, I don't have any target market share. I just need to, from SpiceJet's perspective, we'll try and get as much capacity as we possibly can, both through the aircraft that we are leasing from the ex-Jet fleet, as well as hopefully the return of our MAX aircraft and taking several new MAX aircraft as well. We worry more about profitability than we do about market share. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Well, we have some banking sources who have just messaged to us saying that your liability assessment is an overstatement. They're worried about that 25,000 crore number. They're calling it incorrect. Any reactions?
Well, this is our estimate, and we've seen the numbers quite carefully, and we feel that that's probably the number.